I thought I would always need to at least have half of the screen on us, meaning I still had to have the problem
like a split screen
of hiding the fact that we're skipping, right? But I said, I'm going to make fucking documentaries. I'm going to make music video documentaries. And that's what I did. I started cutting in video, and I had a system of like, so a video is going to, when you change the screen, the human eye has a 2 to 3 frame delay.
Okay.
So you need to change it 2 to 3 frames before that next word caption happens. And it feels good. It feels satisfying.
I'm going to watch this back, and I'm going to improve my clips tremendously.
I haven't talked about this stuff in a while. I wouldn't recommend doing a lot of this now because the game's so different.
Yeah.
You have to understand, when I was at my peak making shorts, I'm getting ahead of myself. I could say that in a minute. But essentially, I do this in August 2021, and I told you about mentioning Mike Laxamana earlier. I'll never forget, I put out a clip about the GRU hacking team in August 2021 that was immediately going viral.
Yeah.
And Mike Laxamana texts me like 18 minutes after it goes up, sends me the link of the clip and says, hey, I can tell, especially knowing you, this takes a really fucking long time to do, but you need to keep doing this because this is really fucking good.
Yeah. And
I was like, fuck, I do have to do this every video, don't I? And so at the time, with where my editing skills were, that was a 29-second video. That one took probably about 8 hours to make.
Wow.
But then I started getting perfect with it. And I started editing the words on one-worders, or I started doing more B-roll. And then I had a higher bar for B-roll, meaning I wanted to make a story. I like, you know how you can have a dream?
Of course.
And in your dream, he's like, of course, I've dreamt before. But in your dream, you know, you might be doing something in your world with your mom, but like Michael Corleone shows up and he's in character.
Yeah.
It's not in The Godfather, but like he's Michael Corleone from The Godfather. And then he's talking to fucking Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, who's in the back seat.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this fever dream.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to you because you're in the dream.
Yeah.
But they're these fake people from fake stories that have now injected into a real, like spawned into a real world. I'm like, I'm going to make fever dreams.
Okay.
So I would cast characters. Like I would, based on the speaker, like Andy Bustamante, he's hard. He looks like Colin Kaepernick. I can't cast Colin Kaepernick as him. He's not a movie star, right? But I'm like, for him, I'm like, all right, I can't get someone that looks like him. But if I'm going to make this clip about him being recruited to CIA, it's going to be Brad Pitt playing him the whole way. Okay. And I may use Brad Pitt from different movies where he looks similar, and the setting of what's being described by Andy's words matches up to what he's saying.
I see.
And so I would cast characters, and what I would do is I would go onto YouTube.
Like a story within the story.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. I used to download sometimes 25 to 30 hours worth of footage. Just download. That doesn't mean go through fast with the mouse. Like sometimes I go through 80 hours worth, but actually download 25 hours worth for a 30-second clip. And I would go into, I can show you these files. I would go in. I don't recommend doing any of this. It worked at the time. It's a terrible idea. I'd go in and I'd cut the candidates. I would write out on a page each line, and I would know, okay, video, meaning it's just going to be him talking, B-roll, B-roll, B-roll. And I would want the B-roll to shift at every phrase.
Wow.
So he says, I went to Russia, B-roll. And when I was there, B-roll. I saw this thing, B-roll, that my wife hated, B-roll. Bum, 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 bum. Like,
a formula.
Yeah, like that. And I mean, these things were like making songs almost. And I'd re-engineer music sometimes. Like I remember with the clip with Andy when he was talking about doing missions from their base. This was like a 27.5-second clip in May 2022. But I used that song by Pop Smoke and Dua Lipa. What the fuck is it called? Oh, that's going to kill me.
I don't know. We can look it up.
Type in Pop Smoke and Dua Lipa.
Because that would bother me too.
Yeah, I can play it in my head right now. Ironically, with my photographic memory, I'm terrible with song names.
More?
Demeanor. Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
Shit. It is Demeanor, yeah.
Yeah.
More and
Yeah,
more.
he said, my demeanor.
Demean-
Oh, my demeanor.
Demeaning
But
more.
the bass line of that song goes in like a 15 to 16 second increment before it changes up,
Okay.
and it resolves. Doesn't even it drops to like a bridge to the verse too early. I got a 27-second clip. That's not going to work. I need it to drop on the 27 seconds. So I re-engineered. I took 15 seconds from the first verse, like from the instrumental, and then found 12 seconds from Dua's verse, like 2 verses later, where I could make the beat land on the same bass, so it sounds like it was just a continuous re-engineered beat. Like audio producers of music would have a heart attack watching this, but it worked. And then I would have it resolved, like, so when he says at the end, so if you're in Russia, then you leave Russia, and it drops right at the end, almost like a door shutting right on time. So I would do stuff like that, and these edits would take so long because for each B-roll spot, I would pick out 10 candidates. And then I might have to take them and change their zoom because I always wanted the camera moving, or I'd color correct it. I mean, it just got more and more as time went on. So by the time I got to the clip in June 2022, the one that went the most viral, I did one that did like 50 million views on YouTube with Andy. That was a 33-second and 9-frame clip, and I took 35 hours to edit that. It was worth it.
Sheesh,
and there's actually one mistake in it. I fucked up at the last minute.
What's the mistake?
The video when it's dropping, when I do the second cut in, because that was another thing. I figured out that you're not always going to have a perfect hook. Okay. So what I would do is I would make a hook. If someone had a perfect topic, but they didn't have the right volume of their voice or the right first sentence to say, I would make the sentence. So on that one, I recorded myself saying, if Putin actually did go crazy and decided to launch a nuke, it might not actually happen because, and it cuts to Andy saying, in Russia,
that's genius.
In Russia, they have a rule. And so it's perfect. And on this one, he had explained all this over like a 3-minute period, but there were these pauses and breaks, and it didn't really work on its own. So at first I made that hook. And then I wanted him to get to this crescendo part where he's basically answering the question of whether or not he thinks they would do it. Like, would Russia nuke?
Of course.
But I couldn't, like, in between him explaining the process and then explaining, like, that ending, there was, I couldn't edit context in the middle. So I said, I got to come in again. So it like he finishes. I remember I had Danny Jones in the middle of this. I'm editing this over like a 4-day period. And in the middle, Danny Jones flies in to do a podcast. And he's like watching me record these hooks. He's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Just random spur.
Right. Cause I would also record I would record like that hook. If Putin did go crazy and actually did go crazy and decide to launch a nuke, I recorded that line like 100 times. And Danny at line 50 is like, bro, I think you got it. I'm like, no, it wasn't right. I missed it on this. So then I'm like, fuck. Like he left, and the next day I'm like, I need one in the middle. So it cuts from him saying, he goes, then Russia would say launch. And I come in and say, which means that if the CIA were able to then they might actually, and it cuts to Andy, say, take what, and he's like finishing the sentence in tone. So it's beautiful. And then I used The Hills by The Weeknd. And there's, at the beginning of that beat, it's like,
literally.
That's annoying. So I wanted it on the last one where it goes, boom, boom. So it launches on that. I would turn down the volume on that because the dBs are like maxing. And then that beat is perfect because it builds to a new level at each point prior to the drop. So it starts with bum 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 bum. So it's changing the notes. So it's creating suspense. Bum 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 bum. Now it goes into the same bar, but it adds a second layer. And so you're constantly building suspense. It's drama. It matches the mystery and like pensiveness of the clip, like the vibe of what your clip is and the music. That's a big bugaboo for me. Like that's got to be right. And I'm like, I need to edit this so it drops on the bump, 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 bump before it goes to the drop. So it needs to end
right there
on that, which means it needs to be 33 seconds and 9 frames based on where I started it. So I ended on that, and that one I'm like, yeah, this one's gonna go.
Oh, that's
like when I put it up.
I keep just thinking in my head, meticulous is the word I'm looking for. Have you ever made music?
Yes.
Okay.
They would not be happy with
I can just tell with your bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
You're like very in tune. I feel like music teaches you rhythm, tempo, teamwork, discipline.
100%.
Music teaches you life skills.
100%.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's something I want to do in the future and be taught how to use the actual tools to do it. Because if music producers saw the tools I was using to make music for my cousin, they'd throw up, but it worked. But I probably had to spend, not even accounting for the extra time it would just take me to do a task because I'm not fast like those guys. Even after that, I still had to take 10 to 12 times the time it would take them because I'm using the wrong tools.
Yeah.
I would do it using the audio tools on Adobe Premiere.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah.
What tool? You're not using Pro Tools or Logic. You're using.
Yeah. I don't know how to use those.
Okay, those are audio specific software. Pro Tools.
That's right. I know how to, like, I've never Googled this and I don't want to because I just hope it's true. But I had heard in the past that Frank Sinatra could not read a note of music, but he could record in front of a 300-person symphony. And while he's mid-recording, if the fucking third flutist in the back left corner was here instead of here, he'd be like, oh, no, you're here. I need you here. Yeah. Like he could feel it.
That is something that you can't.
And that's kind of what I have, but I can't. I haven't used any of the tools to be able to produce that. It's something I want to be able to do in the future. And it's probably like in another life, I would have been a musician.
Still this life,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, we could get there. It's definitely a thought, but because I love, like, I have to limit my time listening to music because I get very, very lost in it.
Yeah. If you had to choose podcast and music, which one would you listen to? On a run.
On a run?
On a walk, on a workout.
If someone listens to a podcast on a run, they're a psychopath. But thank you for doing it. Yeah, no, it's music for me on that. Podcast on a walk, yeah, sure. Okay. Absolutely a podcast. But yeah, I love doing that stuff, and I would like that was the best part about editing these things. When I'm making a story, I got to work with the best actors in the world. I could have Brad Pitt play fucking Andy Bustamante.
Very true.
I could have Al Pacino play the guy who's arresting Louisa.
Yeah.
And then I got The Weeknd or Mick Jagger and Keith Richards on the underlying. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. I admire the fact that you're doing all of those things behind. Just as a consumer, just so you see, we don't even notice those youth doing those 100 takes in the background. We just notice this is good clip. Right. Entertaining, happy, but to you it's like, dude, do you know how many times I have to record that one part? And I edit clips now for my podcast for Skanks, and I'm like, how the hell I don't use certain parts of the podcast because I'm like, no, it doesn't transition nice here. He cuts him off here. He says this word here, and I'm like, I wish there was a way for me to fix this all up.
Yeah,
and you're literally teaching me. There's ways,
and
it's hard.
It gets sick, but that's why I don't do it anymore. We had to.
Yeah.
Like I had to have people push me to give that away because it was all consuming.
I feel like it would take up way too much of your time.
Dude, and it was at a time, so.
Good. This is dedicated to all the kids like